In the middle of the 14th century, a silence began to spread across Europe, a silence broken only by the sound of church bells and the cries of the dying. No one knew its name, no one knew where it came from. But within a few short years, the world would know the terror of the Black Death. Europe in 1346 was thriving. Trade routes from Asia to the Mediterranean pulsed with life. Merchants carried silk, spices, and gold. Pilgrims carried faith. Scholars carried knowledge between East and West. Cities like Venice, Florence, and Paris bustled with optimism. A world on the edge of progress, unaware that death was already moving toward them. The story of the Black Death begins far from Europe, in the remote grasslands of Central Asia. There, a tiny bacterium, Yersinia pestis, found a deadly partnership with fleas that infested wild rodents. It traveled silently, riding on fur, grain sacks, and human ambition, along the trade routes that connected east to west. In 1346, the Mongol armies besieging the port city of Kaffa on the Black Sea faced an invisible enemy. Soldiers began dying by the thousands. Legend says the Mongols hurled the corpses of their own, infected dead over the city walls, a grim act of early biological warfare. The terrified defenders fled by ship, carrying the plague with them. Those ships bound for the Mediterranean would change history. The men aboard did not realize the rats in their cargo carried the same fleas that had feasted on the corpses of Kaffa. By the time the ships reached the Italian port of Messina in October 1347, death was already on deck. The people of Messina watched in horror as sailors stumbled ashore covered in dark swellings, buboes the size of apples. Within days, the disease leapt from house to house, street to street. Panic spread faster than the plague itself. Ships fleeing Messina carried infection to Genoa, to Venice, to Marseille, and within months, the Black Death was sweeping across Europe's trade network like wildfire. Everywhere it landed, the same pattern repeated. First came fever, chills, and vomiting. Then the black swellings, the telltale sign. Most victims died within 3 days. No remedy, no prayer, no flight could stop it. As winter set in, the roads filled with the sound of wooden wheels carrying the dead to mass graves. The old world had begun to die. By 1348, the Black Death had become a force of nature. It crept into villages, monasteries, and royal courts alike. The disease struck without mercy, fever, vomiting, delirium, and the black buboes that swelled beneath the skin. Victims bled from their lungs and mouths. Their flesh turned dark as the infection spread. Priests dared not visit the sick. Physicians were helpless, armed only with superstition and fear. And yet through the chaos, the rhythm of death continued, slow, steady, unstoppable. As faith in medicine failed, faith in God was shaken. Some believed the plague was divine punishment for humanity's sins. Across Europe, groups known as flagellants roamed from city to city, whipping themselves to atone for the world's wickedness. Others turned to darker explanations, accusing strangers, outsiders, and the innocent of bringing the curse. In their desperation, people sought someone to blame. Rumors spread that Jewish communities had poisoned wells or conjured the plague through sorcery. Entire villages turned on their neighbors, leading to massacres from Germany to Spain. The Black Death did not only destroy bodies, it corroded trust, tearing apart the fabric of society. By 1349, death was everywhere. One-third of Europe's population, some 200 million souls, were gone. Families abandoned their dead where they fell. Fields lay untended, cattle wandered through silent towns. In London, bodies were buried in layers, thousands upon thousands, nameless and forgotten. The sound of hammers building, coffins filled the air like a drumbeat of despair. Trade routes collapsed, ships rotted in harbors. Across Europe, entire villages ceased to exist, wiped from maps, erased from memory. The great cathedrals stood silent, their bells rusted with grief. For the first time in history, humanity confronted its own fragility, the sense that civilization itself might not survive. And yet, from the ashes of death came something unexpected: change. With millions gone, the survivors found themselves in a new world. Labor was scarce, giving peasants and craftsmen the power to demand fair wages and freedom from feudal lords. The rigid hierarchy of the Middle Ages began to crack. For the first time, ordinary people could shape their destiny. Though scarred and weakened, Europe endured. The Black Death had taken more lives than any war or famine before it, but it had also cleared the ground for rebirth. A flicker of light emerged from the darkness, one that would grow into a movement destined to reshape the world: the Renaissance. The plague left behind not just empty towns, but empty hearts. Across Europe, art and culture were forever changed. The survivors could not look upon life without seeing death beside it. Paintings showed skeletons dancing among the living, the dance macabre, a grim reminder that death spares no one. In stone and on canvas, artists captured fear, loss, and the fragile beauty of existence. The church, once unshakable, found its authority weakened. Many had prayed for deliverance, but heaven had remained silent. In the aftermath, new voices began to ask dangerous questions. Why had God allowed this suffering? Were human beings not meant to seek their own understanding of the world? Out of this questioning came the first sparks of the Renaissance, a revival of reason, art, and human curiosity. For centuries, medicine had been bound by superstition. But the plague forced a new generation of thinkers to confront the limits of tradition. Some began observing the sick, recording symptoms, seeking natural causes instead of divine ones. It was slow, uncertain work, but it marked a turning point. The seeds of modern science were sown in the soil of the Black Death. With so many lives lost, Europe had to rebuild from the ground up. Cities that survived grew richer as trade resumed. Skilled workers were in demand, and innovation flourished, from better farming tools to the first mechanical clocks. Even architecture changed. Cathedrals rose lighter and brighter, filled with glass and air, as if humanity itself longed to breathe again. Yet the memory of the plague never faded. Chroniclers described entire towns swallowed by death, entire generations erased. The event lived on in memory, legend, and caution. Even centuries later, when new plagues struck, people remembered the old terror and whispered its name, the Black Death. The world learned lessons it would never forget, about disease, about fear, about resilience. It learned that knowledge can mean survival, that ignorance can mean extinction. From that realization grew the disciplines of public health, sanitation, and medicine, the quiet guardians that protect us to this day. The Black Death did not just kill millions, it ended an era. It tore apart an old world built on superstition and gave rise to one driven by reason. Out of its darkness came light, the rebirth of art, science, and human ambition. The plague that once silenced the world became the echo that awakened it. Thanks for watching this video. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. See you in the next one.